Benitec Biopharma's in-house programs target chronic and life-threatening conditions through its gene silencing technology. The company holds the dominant global patent position for expressed RNA interference, placing it in a commanding position for human therapies associated with specific genes and genetic disorders. I'm Carolyn Herbert, and joining me at the CEO sessions in Sydney is the company's Chief Business Officer, Carl Stubbings. Carl, welcome back.
Thanks very much, Carolyn.
Now, Carl, can you start by giving us an introduction to Benitec Biopharma?
Thank you. I'd be delighted to do that. Benitec Biopharma has actually been around for quite a few years. It initially started commercialising a technology that came out of the CSIRO, which, as you described, it's called expressed RNAi, or sometimes ddRNAi. However, the company had some issues in the early days around its patent position, whether or not the patent was granted. What we like to think, it was actually reborn in 2010 when Dr. Peter French took over as CEO. Since then, the company's raised a considerable amount of money, and we've got programs in the clinic in the United States and a very strong pipeline of in-house programs.
So can you tell us a bit more about the company's in-house and licensed programs?
Sure thing. Our lead program is a treatment for a disease called hepatitis C. That program is actually in the clinic at the moment in 4 trial sites in the United States. It's in what's called a phase 1/2A clinical trial, which means we're actually testing it for safety, but also we're using it to treat potentially patients with the disease. We have a program for hepatitis B, which is still preclinical, but will leverage all of the work we're doing with the hepatitis C program. Hepatitis B is a huge indication, and there currently is no cure for that worldwide. And then to go in a completely different direction, just, I guess, enhancing the flexibility of the program, of the technology, I should say. We have a program for wet age-related macular degeneration. If you think about the current standard of care for that disease, it usually involves a monthly or bi-monthly injection into the eyeball of a product called Lucentis or something similar to that. Using our ddRNAi approach for AMD, we'd be able to give a patient perhaps one injection that would last for years and years. So you can see it's obviously a significant benefit. And then finally, to sort of wrap up, we have an indication for an orphan disease called oculopharyngeal muscular dystrophy, just call it OPMD for short. And that program we're currently collaborating with the Royal Holloway University of London and the Institut de Myologie in France. That's a disease for which there's currently no cure, and patients ultimately die choking to death.
And Carl, can you tell us a bit more about your agreement with Swiss company Lonza?
Sure. The whole premise of what we're doing relies on the fact that you can manufacture the drug at the end of the day. So Benitec is essentially a development company. We're taking these programs into the clinic and hopefully through to commercialisation. But to get them commercial, you need to be able to manufacture enough material to treat the patients. Something like 170 million people worldwide have hepatitis C, and 260 million, 250 million have hepatitis B. So if what we're doing works, we're going to need to be able to make, or someone's going to need to be able to make significant quantities of those drugs. So Lonza is working with us to help develop programs and pathways to manufacture that product in a commercially viable and economically sensible way.
Carl, Benitec recently listed on the NASDAQ. Can you tell us about why you decided to list in the US and the net proceeds from that listing?
So yeah, good question, and sort of working backwards. We raised about $18 million US dollars in that particular listing. The principal purpose behind it was to create more shareholder value for the company's stakeholders. The United States' capability to recognise technology, their analysts and the folk that invest in these sort of businesses have a very deep understanding of the technology. Our plan is to stay dual listed. We think that as we start to generate positive clinical data from the hepatitis C program and ultimately from hepatitis B, AMD and the other programs, they'll be significant value inflection points. Being listed on the biggest capital market in the world, we think, will provide the Australian stakeholders with a significant advantage.
Finally, Carl, what's your outlook for FY 2016 and what are you hoping to achieve in the next 12 months?
Yeah, that's a great question. 2016 is just looking like a watershed year for Benitec. We've announced that we've got milestones set for the hepatitis C program, where we expect to see efficacy data towards the end of this year. We expect to complete the phase 1/2A clinical trial for TT034, that's the hepatitis C program, towards the latter part of 2016. We believe that we will have in vitro and in vivo animal data for our hepatitis B program during the course of that year. And importantly, our AMD program, we expect to have developed a vector for that program and to have moved that forward as well. So we think 2016 is going to be a really exciting year.
Carl, thank you for the update on Benitec Biopharma.
Thanks very much, Carolyn.